So we were talking the other day about, I believe we were talking about incels, and you said an interesting comment that there are femcells, and I'd never heard of femcells. I kind of heard about incels. I know a little bit about it. So why don't we start there? What's an incel in your an incel in your view? And I'll sort of give you my take, my
Oh,
view from the street, sort of like not really knowing much about it, sort of take on it.
okay. Well, an incel, as far as I know, this isn't the official I
The
definition, but
unofficial,
unofficial definition of an incel is
organic,
is a male who is wants to have a sexual and or romantic relationship with a woman,
right?
but is unable to, no matter how much they try or pursue the woman,
Hmm.
due to several factors. One, they're very unattractive. Two, they have absolutely no social skills and have no social intelligence or emotional intelligence. And three, they probably have extremely low self-esteem and think everything's against them.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of their attitude and their physical looks, and maybe their status, that prevents them from either getting sex or having a relationship, and or both. And incels lately have been in the news because a few of them went on killing sprees.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it was in 2018. Alec Manisian was a guy, 25-year-old male in Toronto, who ran over a bunch of people with his van. He
Hmm.
killed 10 people. And I watched the interrogation on YouTube. And also it was reported, like I read somewhere, that he said he did it because he was angry about being an incel, and this was part of the incel rebellion. He was like getting back to society. And one of his heroes was Elliot Rodger, who was a young man who, I think in 2014, went, I don't know if it did happen, I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015, in California.
Hmm.
He went on a shooting spree and he killed at least 6 people, men and women. It wasn't just women.
He was angry.
And he was very angry. He couldn't find a girlfriend. He didn't like being a virgin. I think he was 22 years old. Yeah. And his father actually was the assistant director for the Hunger Games.
Oh,
Either the
really?
Hunger Games or Divergent series. I think it was the Hunger Games. And Stefan Molyneux does a lot of stuff on him on YouTube. And I've seen a lot of YouTube videos on him. And this guy had issues. Like, he was a good looking kid. He was mixed race. He was like Asian and white. I
Right.
don't know what Asian, if it was Vietnamese or Malaysian or something, but so he kind of had a mixed race, and he was a lean guy, slim guy, and his parents just gave him money. They just, oh, here's a car, and he thought, well,
Oh.
I have lots of money, I have a car, why doesn't want anybody date me? But he had absolutely no social skills. And if you watch him on the videos, and he also put out a manifesto type video, I think the day before he did the shootings, explaining what he was going to do. And he actually put it out on the internet, but nobody caught it until it was too late. And he shot and killed a bunch of people. And he
Hmm.
thought, well, I'm a supreme gentleman. He called himself the supreme gentleman. And he thought it was very unfair that he never even kissed a girl. And Alec Minixian, the guy with the van who ran over those people, referred to Elliot Rodger to him as a hero.
Elliot
And
Rodger, did he die? I'm sorry if I missed that part.
yeah, he shot himself.
Okay.
The cops chased him down, and I think his car crashed, and they had him surrounded, and he
All
did
right.
himself in. He didn't want to face the consequences.
Yeah,
And it's very sad. And
it is. Yeah.
yeah, and Alec Minissian, the van guy, the guy who ran over people with his van, he referred to Elliot Rodgers as like a hero. He's supposedly a hero in the
Crazy.
incel community.
He's like a
And I don't
martyr.
know much about Reddit, but there's a lot of Reddit posts or Reddit forum. It's
Hmm.
on the internet, where you have all these incels gathering, and all they do is whine and complain about being incels. Now, the
Okay, sorry. They whine and complain about the incels.
oh, about being incels.
Okay.
They don't like being incels, and they think it's all unjust, and they're
All right.
just complaining about being incels and how horrible their life is.
Yeah.
Now, the ironic thing is, the whole incel movement was started by a woman in 1997.
I heard that.
Her name was Alana. She didn't want to go by her real name.
Yes.
And this was in Toronto in 1997, and she was a femcell, which is like a female version. She was unable to get dates or relationships.
But she was gay.
I don't know if she was. I didn't know. I didn't.
Yeah, she was gay.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure.
But she started a forum, a website.
What was her name again? Sorry.
Alana, that's her first name. She doesn't mention her last name, and she started the Involuntary Celibacy Project.
Oh.
And yeah, it was like a forum or website. There was no YouTube. They didn't have YouTube back then, I don't think. And the internet was still new, so they didn't have all Twitter and all that, Facebook. So she started that as a forum to help involuntary celibates. Now, the thing is, online, a lot of incels don't acknowledge that there are femcells.
Yeah.
Incels, and maybe not even non-incels, think that, well, no matter how ugly a woman is, they'll always find somebody to do her. Like they figure, well, men are such pigs that they'll do anyone. And probably that's true to a certain degree. But if you're,
Yep.
Like
tree stumps and robots, we'll do them
yes,
all.
Yeah, but
get your rocks off.
Yeah, but there are some women that are either they have physical issues, whether it's through health, genetic. Some people are just hideously deformed. It's not their fault. They're just born with weird facial structure or whatever, or morbidly obese. So these women have the same problems that the males do, but unfortunately the males don't seem to have very much compassion against for the women.
Okay.
So you get a mixed bag of there's a war of the sexes between the incels and femcells, it seems, which is kind of sad because they both have the same issues, So that's what I know about incels and femcells.
Interesting. Taking apart the catastrophic part of it.
Yes.
The mass killings and such, which is tragic beyond words, especially when innocent people get killed. Taking it, like, that's, the perimeter, that's the exception to the rule. The rule being there is a group of people who call themselves incels. My reaction and my personal belief, and by the way, was Frankenstein an incel?
I don't think he had a chance to become an incel.
I noticed your poster.
Yeah, I thought, well, he probably would have been an incel if he lived.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I like to put in a new movie poster for every.
It's that whole, when a crowd shows up at your castle doorstep
with
torches and axes and ready to do you in, that sort of complicates things.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think this is going to sound wrong, but this is my initial sort of gut feeling on all this. I think it's more applicable to men, and I'll tell you why. And I'm sure you'll agree with my reasoning to some degree. When you think of status is the number one thing that men need to achieve in order to move ahead in life. Women have a different sort of set of parameters, such as the market value that defines them, and their status is different than what men, it's mostly on competence. Let's equally say, like, being healthy and sort of like being of sound mind, and being sort of like taking care of yourself in many ways, mentally, physically, spiritually, applies to both. But men need to sort of not just be really buff and attractive. They need to be a high value male. They need to be able to produce. I know it sounds a little bit sexist and misogynist. People want to put me in that category, whatever. I mean, this is my initial reaction is that men, young men in particular, who are lacking in that area. And I think a lot of them, by the way, the soy boys are, they come from single mother homes or are lacking a strong male presence in their life. So they didn't really develop that. And by the way, I put myself in that category. When I look at my life, I'm 62 years old now. And my biggest struggle has been, since I was a child, trying to develop a positive masculinity. I grew up with 4 sisters, an absent father, and I acted out my entire life from the age of 5 through to the age of, I'm going to say 31, but it was residually still a part of my life afterwards. And when I say 31, that's when I sobered up and really changed the direction of my life. But when I was younger, I acted out constantly. And my mom even brought me to a social worker when I was a young kid. And the social worker said, well, it's easy. He's just looking for his father's attention. So I achieved attention, male attention, through uh, being troublesome and getting in trouble with the law, which I happened to be a lot of. So I was arrested many, many times. So negative male attention was achieved through that behavior. So I consider myself in many, many ways to be an incel. But I was never frustrated. Of course I was frustrated. I was a late bloomer. I didn't have my first girlfriend or I didn't lose my virginity till I was 20. So that's a late bloomer by most standards, but mostly because I was extremely shy. I was incompetent around girls. And I was not developed yet. And that didn't happen until, again, like, I had girlfriends throughout my 20s. Um, a lot of them were dysfunctional, and I didn't really pull it together until, again, like I said, I sobered up when I was 31, and there's a point to all this, and I really want to get to it in a minute. I want to get your opinion. Okay. I'm just trying to paint the picture. It's based on my own personal experience. So, and I want to sort of categorize the incel movement in a very damning way, which I'm about to get to momentarily. So, you or people watching this may not like what I have to say about it, but I'm going to say it anyways. So, but my own personal story is I was one largely. I didn't have that group to identify with with. So I think what's going on nowadays. You ever read Faith Popcorn? She had a
No,
book out.
I've heard of her name, but I've never read her.
Yeah, she wrote a lot of books in the 90s, and she was probably still is to this day. She predicted trends, and one of the big trends she predicted was cocooning and people breaking off into groups and all these behaviors that she predicted. And people in business use it because they use it for marketing purposes. But one of the things she predicted, and fits in well with incels, is how we're able to, break off and to identify with the groups, or all these groups. Whereas before, we were all one big group. You lived in a town, maybe with 40,000 people, and there was that community group that you had, and most of the people went to church, and most of the people there was a lot more in common than there was not. And nowadays, that's really sort of shattered. And I don't say shattered in a destructive way. I say shattered. It's splintered, which is good. We get to identify with whatever group we want to. So the incels now have their bros. And what I don't like about it is the whining, complaining, because I feel that my gut reaction from the get-go, and I'm open to any other interpretation or change in my mind. But my gut reaction was and is that it's a state of victimhood, and it applies to both men and women, but particularly men. And I feel bad for them because it's like I was there. I was the Frankenstein, and but I didn't know any better, and probably a good thing I didn't have this group, because when you have a group of sympathizers, you might have a hard time pulling out of it, I guess. I don't know. But at some level, because I remember when I was 21 years old, man, I was really messed up and I was having panic attacks, but I was journaling. And I remember writing in my journal how I wanted to be able to be a man, whatever that meant. I did not know. And in the mid 80s, I read some of the earlier books by, you might consider these to be the early advocates of the men's right movement, I guess, for lack of a better word. Is there a better word? The men's rights movement sounds a little bit militant. So let's say just the men's movement. It's men trying to become better. It's really that simple. We're just trying to become better men. But Herb Goldberg wrote a few books, which I read because I was looking. I was really, really looking for answers. And I was so messed up inside. And again, I didn't change that behavior until I sobered up in 1991 and took, because I faced the dragon, I took steps to make myself better. And then really life, my 30s, I was late, but whatever. things really worked out well for me. And I look at that and I go, okay, that's what I did. And those are some positive steps that similarly anybody can take, including an incel. Now, again, like I mentioned, I feel bad for them because, you know, they're young, they don't know any better, they feel sorry for themselves. They have this brotherhood of misery, this covenant of misery that they're aligned with, which keeps them stuck in that. And I feel bad for them because how are they going to get out of that? And whether or not you agree with my general synopsis, I don't know. I want to ask you too, Henry, if you agree with that, and or if you have further thoughts on it, and what are some possible, in your opinion, some possible solutions? And I know from your history that one of the things you had done when you were young was you were in the cadets,
Army cadets and Army reserves.
which helped big
Yeah,
time.
it really helped with masculine, positive masculinity, I guess. Like it uh, helped me face challenges. There were a lot of hardships, but I needed that. And I'm really glad I went through all that because, you know, I was part of a peer group of other males, and I think males need that. And we had examples, senior NCOs and officers who were kind of like, I consider them my father and uncle symbols, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
father figures or uncle figures. And I think it would apply too, like if guys, when they're in sports teams, like,
Yep.
well, I was never that good in sports, so I wasn't really on any sports teams.
Neither was I.
But you know, the Army cadets and the Army reserves were great for me. Like they helped me face some challenges, and that stuff is instilled in you after a while. And
Mm-hmm.
you face hardships and you get through it. That stays with you. And I think incels, or actually a lot of people in this society, don't have those challenges. I think
Sadly.
I got my ass kicked in Army cadets and reserves. Back then, the NCOs weren't not politically correct, so we were called abortions and all sorts of nasty things and yelled at, and we kind of took it as this is the way it is. And I was almost like it was a challenge. Like after a while, getting yelled at on the parade square is almost like an honor, you know. And we got to fire all sorts of neat weapons and stuff. But,
Yeah.
anyways, I think um, I agree with part of what you say. There is a lot of whining and complaining, and that's not good. But I do have some compassion for incels. Like there are some people that are just totally effed up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's because they're raised or maybe they have autism or something and they have issues with social cues, or they're really short. Like males who are really short have a hard time with women, unless of course they have lots of money. And even then you wonder, like, why is she with
Yeah.
me?
Well, given the right circumstances, those
Yeah.
guys will compensate.
Yeah, but I do believe that incels need a mentor
Yeah.
or a group of mentors to help them through life. Not just about getting women. I mean, getting women is great, but it's not the be all and end all.
No.
You have to find a purpose or get some challenges, and even if you fail, you got to get back on the horse. And I think what's lacking is a lot of young males and probably females too. They don't have enough challenges thrown at them with a mentor to help them through it. Like back in the old days, if you were a farmer or you learned a trade, so you had a father or an uncle teaching you how to do things properly, and they would instill discipline in you.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I think that's lacking in a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I think I was a borderline incel in my 20s. I too was a late bloomer, age 20.
Oh,
But
really?
yes, and I didn't have very many girlfriends. But the surprising thing is, anytime I got a girlfriend, it was always they who picked me. It's
All
not
right.
like when I went and pursued, I didn't find anyone.
Yeah.
But it's like they
Similarly,
felt,
I that's
yeah,
what
they
that's
picked me. But I went through a period of very frustration where I kind of thought like everybody else has a rule book on dating and women
yep.
except me. Like I wasn't handed out the book. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I came into my own in my 30s. Actually, that was when things
Okay.
started getting better. But when I was in my 20s, I had a lot of issues I had to deal with. And at one period, I went monk mode. I purposely avoided women just to work on myself. And that's
Right.
probably the best thing I've ever did. You
Monk
know,
mode.
uh, if anybody is wondering, what monk mode is purposely staying celibate so you can work on yourself. No
Mm-hmm.
distractions. Because what I learned throughout my life is even the healthiest relationships are very difficult, you know. And if you're stuck with a wacko or a whack job, and I too in my 20s was not a good candidate. Like looking back, if I had a daughter and she dated somebody like me in my 20s, I'd say stay away from them. Like,
Oh, really?
too many issues, stay away from them. So yeah, it's like you got to get your own, as Jordan Peterson said, get your own house in order before you go out there
Clean
and
your
change the
room.
world. Yeah. So I think people kind of write off incels. Oh, they go out on killing sprees and that. That's a very small minority.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of young males or older males and females who are living lives of quiet desperation. I remember when I was a kid, there's this woman that lived in my neighborhood, and I don't know what kind of disease. I think it's neurofibromatosis, which some people say the elephant man had that disease, but he didn't. What it is,
Right.
it tumors on your body. And there's this poor woman in Sudbury, I remember, who had all these bumps all over her face.
Right.
Like, and even if you get surgery, they grow back. And I'm thinking this poor woman probably never got married, maybe never had a boyfriend. And I
Yeah.
always saw her alone, and she was just hideous looking. And it was like revolting. And I really felt some compassion for her. So I
Mhm.
think in some cases, like if you're deformed or if you have some really physical issues, it's tough. It's tough. And I think probably the best thing to do is, in some ways, it's fatalistic where I think that maybe you're not going to have a relationship. Maybe that's just the way it is. And
Yeah.
probably the best thing to do is cultivate a group of friends and get a job or get some sort of activity which you care about, or a cause which gets you out of yourself, or just take the focus off yourself and what you need. Obviously, well, not what you need, but what you want. And I think maybe that is one answer. And maybe through Providence, maybe you will find somebody.
Mhm.
But yeah. And
My wife's going to open the door in a minute now. Hold on.
okay, sure.
No, she went back up.
Okay.
What's the hurdle?
So, and femcells, I don't think there's as many femcells as there are incels.
No.
I could be wrong. And they probably have their own unique needs. You know, a
Yeah.
guy at the very least could always get a hooker. Okay.
Well, yeah, but is that
Yeah, but getting a hooker is they probably want more than just sex. They probably want somebody to like them. They actually want somebody to actually like them. And a hooker will still pretend they like you, but you know.
I heard something years ago. I don't know to what degree it applies, but I think it was from an actual prostitute who said that you'd be surprised how many men just want somebody to talk to,
Yeah. Yeah.
middle-aged men and whatnot.
Sure.
They don't really want the sex. They just want to feel,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, interesting. So what about, okay, I think one of the solutions is to get into a competitive mode, create a brotherhood, and Fight Club. Number
Right.
one rule of Fight Club is you never mention Fight Club, because Fight
Right.
Club is it's such a powerful balm. It's such a powerful elixir to get in there and fight other guys. And I've heard, I don't know who it was, but one of the discussions with Rollo Tomasi and the other guys, they were talking, one of the guys said, yeah, there's not enough bullying. Boys bully by nature, and it forces you to position yourself on the scale of competency, even though it's physical and it sounds wrong, but it just sort of gives you that process and that experience to force yourself to say, okay, I got to man up here. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with manning up. But one of the solutions would be to get in with a bunch of guys. I really, really feel one of the best things you could do is to join a boxing club or martial arts, where you're going to get that physicality out of you, and it's going to be done in a healthy way with some strong, positive male role models, both for men and women, but it will be so beneficial for men. And it's a great way to sort of address that, don't you think? Or the cadets.
I agree. You need to be part of a tribe,
Yeah.
like, even if you're a bunch of, I hate to use the word geeks, because if you can get a bunch of geeks that form a group of like in the astronomy club, or even gamers, like guys who are in the basements, they sort of have a tribe.
Yeah, they
Although
do.
I think you got to get out of the basement, but
Yeah.
go do stuff with people. Some of
Yeah.
my greatest memories when I was a kid and a teenager was me and my friends driving around on our bikes, you know, the ones with the banana seats and the high
That was
handlebars.
me. Yeah. All the
Oh
way,
yeah,
man.
just driving around town looking for adventures, that checking out places you're probably not supposed to go into, like
I'm looking
old
for
sheds and
trouble.
buildings and stuff like that, exploring. That was fun, man. And
Free
that's,
range kids.
kids don't have that so much anymore. They're
No,
all like at home and they have their play dates and everything's organized. They don't have that spontaneity, you know?
no, you're right. And what's lacking sorely, what's lacking the most is the positive male
Yes,
presence in their life. So
that is true. I'm sure, like, I don't want to go get down on single mothers. They do the best, but you need a male in your life to teach you how to be a male.
I credit my mother-in-law. When my wife was in grade 6, he was a chronic alcoholic, and they divorced back around 1970. And divorce was frowned upon back then. But my wife has a younger brother, and he would have been probably around grade 1 or 2 at the time. She got him into Big Brothers,
Okay.
which I'm like, okay, that's a smart move. There's a single mom with a head on her shoulders who's finding a solution and recognizes that her son needs this.
And probably the same for girls. Let's say a girl is got she's living in a single father home. Like
Mm-hmm.
she has no mother figure.
Mm-hmm.
She probably needs an older female to guide her, teach her woman things.
But
You know, it works both
honestly
ways.
though, what's the ratio of girls living with their dads versus boys living with their
Probably a
moms?
lot less, I would think, unless you know, the father has custody of the woman because the mother's a total whack job or has real
Mm-hmm.
issues or you know is totally incompetent. Then I can see that. But
Yeah.
usually women get custody of the kids.
Interesting. So incels, it's a movement. It's a group.
Yeah, I don't think there's like any leaders. It's probably one of those informal groups of people that get together on the internet, and they also, what was I going to say? They just probably just moan and complain, and I don't see much. Not that I've never seen any of those forums. I just heard about them. But
Yeah.
what I heard is lots of hatred.
Oh,
They even
really?
have terms like Chad and Stacy.
Yep.
A
Heard of
Chad
that.
is a good-looking male who gets all the girls. A Stacy is a good-looking female, probably cheerleader type, who gets all the guys, and all the guys want her. And then there's the Tyrones, which are the black version of Chads. You know, Chad and Tyrone. You
Yeah.
know, I'm sure every nationality has their name. You know, in Poland it's probably the Janusz. You know, or in in Russia it's the Boris. You know, who knows? I'm being facetious about Janusz and Boris, but there is the Chad, Stacy, and Tyrone are actually terms used on the
Yeah.
internet for high level males and females. You know, high
Yeah.
level as in sexual market value, meaning they're really hot, they're popular, and they get all the girls or boys. You know.
Yeah.
And there's probably gay incels and lesbian femcells. I would think there's probably a subculture of those as well, where you get some poor gay guy who can't get a date,
Yeah.
a lesbian who can't get a date. They probably suffer just as much as heterosexual incels and femcells. I don't know
For
too much
sure.
about them, but I'm assuming their problems are probably very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have some other issues that we don't know about, but they're, you know, like,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad for them, and I can
yeah,
certainly relate to the whole incel situation in many ways because having been sort of there myself and it really boiled down to you said it when you were describing your experience with the cadets. You said hardships
yes,
that really rung out to me, and that's the whole idea of just picking up your cross and bearing it. But you need to know that. I never knew
yeah,
that.
yeah.
People would accuse me of just taking things for granted. Well, I just didn't know any better. I acted out all the time, and I was just this ball of unconscious. I was unconscious, and until I woke up, then the way became much clearer for me. And I think that that's the journey. I believe that anybody in that situation out to start looking for, and you gotta. I really believe you got to stop. You got to stop complaining and playing victim. That's something I've always felt close to my heart about. And Otherwise, you're not going to pull out and take at least the first step toward going, okay, I need to do something.
Yeah, it could be just changing your appearance. You ever seen the movie The Elephant Man?
Yeah.
Okay, now there's a scene.
I am not an animal.
Yes, there's a scene where the Elephant Man is becoming the toast of Victorian society, and he's going, I think, to an opera. And they have him dressed up in a tux. And this is funny. This is the thought I had in my head when I was watching the movie is, okay, so he's hideously deformed, but he's wearing a tux, and I'm thinking, this guy looks good. He's looking sharp.
Nice. It's amazing what a suit will do, eh?
Yeah. So dress better, make sure your clothes fit, colors match, lose some weight if you have to, or put on some weight if you have to. I mean, you don't have to be a bodybuilder or Twiggy, for anybody who's under 40. Twiggy was a fashion model in the 60s who was very skinny, and that was the latest. That's what people aspired to. Yeah, there's always ways of improving yourself. And I found, even for myself, I went through a period where when it came to fashion, I probably was your typical guy. I just didn't think too much about it. I bought clothes. If they fit, fine. Then I ended up getting a girlfriend who ended up kind of like, why are you wearing that? And she dressed very well. And she kind of got me into dressing well. She wasn't doing it in a way that, you shouldn't dress like that.
All right. Can I, before you continue, can I make one comment on that? Jordan Peterson brings this up. And I just like, when first time I heard him say it, I was like,
okay.
And I don't remember the exact, I'm going to paraphrase, but women invoke men to become better.
That's true.
I don't remember the exact phrasing, but he says it much more succinctly. But women are the ones that I don't want to use the word shame, but it's the wrong word, but that's the one that comes to mind. They're the ones that motivate men to become better. And the way he describes it is much, much better. And that's what you're touching on.
Yeah. And this lady, this is kind of funny because I remember wearing shorts and just regular athletic socks, and she would not have it. She says, I'm not going out with you with wearing like half calf socks. So I had to go out and get a bunch of those little tiny socks that, shorts.
Hey, it helped you, right?
It did. And I also, at one period in my life, worked in a men's clothing store.
Okay. And was this before or after you met her?
This is after I met her.
Yeah.
I didn't work for the clothing store because of her. I got laid off from my job, and the only job I can get was working at a clothing store. But I really liked it. And
there's nothing wrong with working at a men's clothing store.
Oh, I liked it actually. And my favorite activity.
I could see you doing that, by the way.
Makeovers. I loved it when somebody comes into the store and says, I've never had a suit and I have to get a suit for the wedding and I don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, step into my office, young man. Let me choose the suit for you, the shirt, the tie, the, fedora, everything,
That's amazing. You're literally transforming people.
Yes. And they liked it. And I got to the point where my own fashion rule is make sure the clothes fit and the colors are good, match. That's the rule of thumb I go to. I don't adhere to any style other than, okay, I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but man buns are just wrong. And frocks have got to be the ugliest footwear in the history of footwear. So there, I said it, But other than that, pick something you feel comfortable in, and then you'll do okay.
So you had a knack for looking at a guy and saying, "Yes, let's try this," and that guy would obviously be like, "Wow."
Like I see people downtown still or anywhere, and I figured, oh, I wish I could like just grab them and say, "Listen, this is what you need to do to change your appearance." And some people
how come I didn't know that about you? I've known you for 30 years. How come I didn't know that?
I don't know. I just
I have a vague recollection of was it at Moore's on LaSalle?
Tip Top Tailors.
Okay. And
I worked at Tip Top for 2 years.
Nice.
Oh. Yeah. And I love the job. The pay sucked, and at that time it was only part-time.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a full-time job after there. And it's like, well, I couldn't justify staying there part-time.
Yeah.
Going for the full-time job.
Interesting.
Which was a call center, which is another story. I totally do a show on call centers,
We'll talk about that later. Yes. But listen, anybody who's in a situation that we're describing, stop complaining, whining, and go find some nice clothes.
Clothes that fit. They don't have to be expensive.
No, Tip Top's cheap, and
Yeah. Even
uh,
Value Village or the secondhand consignment stores, get something, look, what I also did is I looked at GQ magazines and all these men's fashion magazines or men's
yeah,
magazines, and they had like the looks for whatever year. And well, instead of buying the $2,000 suit, buy one of the same style that's maybe 500,
yeah,
uh, or shoes, like whatever, like get a kind of an eye for it. And
yeah,
you don't have to go strictly what's in the book, but
yeah.
pick what looks good for you.
I got to tell you, I have 4 sisters younger than me.
Okay.
They all have a sense of fashion
Yeah.
um, that was very important to them. They were not slouches in the area of fashion. So, and being around 4 sisters, you kind of know what women like. I'd hear things like if a guy has bad teeth, I mean,
Right.
yellow teeth, bad breath. So I always kind of through them by default knew that there was a certain physicality that you had to present yourself with. So I feel fortunate in that sense. And in my 20s, I would wear blazers and ties all the time, especially when I started my own photography business when I was 25. The tweed jackets.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the
Well, I'll
first
tell
thing
you.
I bought was a 3-piece suit. That was like in the early 80s.
Okay.
But always had a sense of that, so I feel a little bit fortunate, and I knew that, and I would attract a lot of female attention. I was just completely incompetent, and I drank way too much. So could have
You probably
easily been.
attracted the wrong females too.
Oh, my girlfriends, yeah, they all
Yeah,
had serious issues
yeah,
until
yeah.
I sobered up myself. And I was 4 years into changing my life around when I met my wife, and I met her at the YMCA playing squash, so she didn't really stand out to me because she was just this other person I played squash with. Until the day I met her in the parking lot, she was a full-time senior accountant. She came out of the car, and it was like late June. The weather was nice, and she came out of the car dressed in her super suit, her clothes that she wore at work that day. And I was like, wow. And I noticed her, and I said, "There's a woman who respects herself and likes to dress up." And that was when we had our first date. And 6 months later, we were married and
Very
pregnant.
nice. Yeah, or was that your wedding?
You were there. So
Yeah.
that's how we met. But the point being that there's appreciation for clothing, and
Yes.
that has always been very important to me. But likewise, I think it's far more relevant to a man who takes care of himself, at least physically. I mean,
Right.
you got to take care of yourself mentally, and you got to do
Yeah.
all the other stuff, but at least start there. Don't dress like a slouch. It's not a thing.
Yeah, that's true. Another thing I think is I self-forgetting. Like, okay, like what is being self-conscious? To me, being self-conscious means I'm totally just conscious of myself. All I'm
Hmm.
doing is thinking about myself, like my being. And I think one of the keys, and I went through lots of self-conscious, self-centeredness phases in my life, where what I had to do was forget about myself,
Hmm.
quit worrying about what people think about me, quit worrying about how I'm doing and how I'm feeling, and just live. Go
Hmm.
out there and I had this one mentor who used to tell me, "What makes you think you're that important?" And that would really annoy me,
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, "What makes you think you're that important?" And I thought, "What?"
You just mentioned something, mentor. I've
Yeah,
always had mentors and
yeah,
coaches,
yeah,
uh, especially after I changed my life around. I feel that that's worth mentioning.
yeah. And I started to slowly, and it worked. It's worked. Quit worrying about how the world sees me all the time and what people think of me, or are they talking about me. And I think I've really improved in that area. I don't worry that much about what people think of me. In
Hmm.
fact, sometimes I've made decisions in my life which really annoyed and parts of my family and other people. They thought, "What are you doing?" And no, it's my decision, I'm doing it. And I kind of just
And you
march.
didn't care. You didn't. They
No,
didn't
well, I
affect you.
cared a little bit, but not enough to stop my
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
You march to the beat of your own drum. So I think
Yeah.
part of it's almost like there's all these paradoxes or ironies or whatever. It's like, in order to get good self-esteem, quit worrying about whether you have good self-esteem or not. Just go out there and do things. Fail a few times, but and if
Struggle.
you're worried about people liking you, don't worry about people liking you. Go out there and like people. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost like you do the opposite, and you get the rewards. You know,
And stop complaining and never be a victim.
that's right. Because if you're overly occupied with yourself and your plight all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, there's times in your life where you're going to have bad periods where you need to whine and cry a bit, but after a while, there's a limit. You know,
Yeah.
you got to move forward.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my spiel on my solutions.
That's good. I really
Or go
like
see a
what,
psychiatrist or psychologist, get some professional counseling, because maybe
yeah.
some people need that. You know.
Well, let's put that in the category of
Sure.
finding a mentor,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the saying? When the student is ready, the master will show.
Yeah. Yeah.
That reminds me of that book. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It was one of my favorite books, my early days of recovery. About a young man who finds a master. I think they did a movie about it a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Okay, anyways, I forgot. But listen, we're going to close off now.
All righty.
But I'm going to ask you a question. And we can
Okay.
pick this topic up if you think it's a worthy topic.
Sure.
Is toxic masculinity legitimate? Think about that. And I'm thinking it's a worthy topic
Sure.
to bring up. I have a lot to say about that.
So do
And I want to talk about the devouring mother, which
Okay.
ties in.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
It ties in well with the incel movement
Sure.
as well. The devouring mother is a myth. You know, it's a mythological symbol which encompasses a lot of truth, and it ties into a lot of cultural changes and movements and realities. So
All righty.
I'm going to stop recording, but don't quit on me here.
Nope.